It's so abrupt when we do yoga nidras on Wednesdays. Well, hi and welcome, and thank you for your trust in being here. Grief, your willingness to turn towards grief and hold some space for it is wonderful and beautiful, and also sometimes scary. And so, yeah, I hope that it will be nourishing for you in some way. Feel free to let me know at any time if the sound is off. I'll keep an eye out for any chats from you, and otherwise I'll assume all is well. So just to let you know how tonight's gonna go a little bit, I'll be talking more in the first part, introducing our theme, which is descansos. And it's from Women Who Run with the Wolves, this amazing book by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and so I'll actually read from the book. Any gender is welcome. It's a beautiful chapter for anybody, so not to worry about that. So I'll be reading to you a little bit, I'll be reading you some poetry, and I'm going to also introduce to you the gates of grief, which is a concept by Frances Weller. I really love the gates of grief because it opens up our understanding of grief to things we may not have considered. That can be lovely, and it can also be overwhelming, right? So it's really important to me that you take what you need in this time that we'll spend together. So if that means that you turn it off and walk away, I'm okay with that. If that means that you are folding laundry or doodling or walking around your house or your neighborhood even, then that's all welcome too. Those are all ways you might titrate the intensity of grief. And titrate, I can really describe it best as kind of like dipping your toe in and then being able to come back out again, so that we don't proceed to overwhelm you to the point that you are flooded or frozen or stuck. So this is my first time doing this online. I've only ever done it in person. And so I'll give some trust to you that you will take care of yourself in whatever way that you need, knowing you're going to have a recording of this. So if you need to come back to it later, you can definitely do that. So that's an important first start. Sometimes when we turn towards grief, we find there's a lot there and a lot that we may or may not have noticed before. And so sometimes when we find more than we originally thought was there, it can be important to seek support afterwards. So if you have your own therapeutic relationships, like you're a therapist of some kind, you may lean on them after this. And offering yoga therapy too. So if you wanted to process it more so with me directly, you can also do that, or whatever other ways you take care of yourself. Those may need to be called on afterwards. And so again, I'll leave that to you, but if you need any help finding someone, please feel free to send me an email. I have some starting points in terms of therapy, other providers as well. So happy to help in that. I will say too, when it comes to grief, we probably don't need to force it. We don't need to necessarily pull up something that isn't ready to come. So even though we're going through the different gates of grief, it may be that you only really address one today. This isn't the grief Olympics, you know? Actually going slow may be the best way. So don't force it. And what my therapist, Lisa, always says is respect the resistance. So if there's a topic you really don't want to go towards in this session today, then of course you don't have to. There may be a very good reason why now is not the time. So it's all really about respecting your own limits, your own needs, the best that you can. Yeah. And I'd love to introduce you to some of the people who have influenced our work today before we get into it. Of course, we have Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, as I mentioned. She is a poet, a Jungian psychoanalyst, and a cantadora, which is a keeper of the old stories in the Latina tradition. I love her. If you know me, you know this book is my favorite ever. So much of my work is based on it, so I'm really grateful to her and her work. We also have Frances Weller in the room, who wrote, the book is actually called The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and that's where we find the gates of grief. And if you do want to read that book, feel free to let me know. I can remind you of the name later on. But he's a psychotherapist, writer, and he calls himself a soul activist, which is quite lovely. He really introduces to us a strong case for grief as sacred work, grief as a part of our humanity that too many of us are used to denying and pushing away. And that's also why I love this work so much, because not acknowledging it doesn't make it not be there. It just makes it so lonely generally to hold alone. And so I'm really interested in practices and rituals and ceremonies that can help us continue on with grief as like a little sidecar that we're just kind of bringing along with us. And I am that way inclined because of my teacher, Ann Pittman, who's my yoga therapy teacher, who's taught me a lot about grief and death and endings. She's a yoga therapist working in oncology and working with many people who are dying and facing dying. And she has taught me a lot about holding all of this. So I'm really grateful to be here with you tonight. Thanks to all of those people and to you as well for being here. As I mentioned, it's a women-centric book. So I'm going to speak in the actual cited text. I'm not going to alter it, mostly because I'd probably trip up on my words. But as I said, everyone is welcome, regardless of gender orientation. Honestly, most of this book, I think, is applicable to anyone. It's just human work, really. And it is from the 80s. So yeah. Okay. If there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll begin. If you haven't already, I should have said this before, but here we are. Feel free to set your space in whatever way you need. If there's anything you need to like shove in your closet so it doesn't bug you, if you'd like to light a candle for yourself, you can do that. If you'd like to grab a blanket, a pillow, a journal, a tea, a water, anything like that, please do, if you haven't already. Anything that you can bring to yourself that brings comfort is worth grabbing. It's worth the little bit of effort to grab it, because this is a hard topic. And so let's bring in all the comfort that we can. So welcome to the funeral. This is really a funeral for our losses, for the grief we hold individually and collectively. We have funerals dating back at least 300,000 years, but we don't really take the time generally, culturally, in this Western Canadian culture to acknowledge endings. And it can leave us feeling like disoriented or alone, or I don't know, a lot of things. It can leave us feeling a lot of different types of ways. And so here we hold a funeral for whatever it is that needs the acknowledgement of an ending. When we have a funeral, when somebody has passed, we have the opportunity to gather together, to receive support. We have the opportunity to be cared for, to check in on each other, to express grief, like to wear all black and to weep. And we just don't seem to have a lot or enough practices to do that when we lose something other than a person, you know? So here's the solution that I found in this book. And I found this at a time that I was grieving a huge loss. And I read it at just the right time. And so here I bring it to you. I'll start with a poem and then I'll read to you from the book. So however you want to be again while I'm reading and talking is up to you. You can be in stillness, moving, you can be watching, you can be looking out the window, you can experiment and see, where do I want to be right now, and go with that. So this poem is called Grief is Talking. And I wrote this at a time that I heard somebody, I honestly don't remember who, I heard somebody talking about some grief that they had. And somebody else was clearly uncomfortable with their grief and kind of like shooed it away. They were kind of like something along the lines of, oh yeah, but what about this? Or yeah, but on the bright side, and honestly, people generally do that from a good place. They don't want to see you upset or sad, but unfortunately, it can prevent us the opportunity to express grief and to have the response that comes with that, which is generally empathy and care. And so based on that interaction, I wrote this, and here I bring it to you. When grief is talking, don't gloss over it. Don't speak over it. Let grief fill the room, steal the air, paint everything heavy and broken. Let grief stay a while. Listen to the stories and memories spilling from her lips. Put her in your pocket and take her with you. Celebrate every single step. Let her remind you that love means loss and that love is everything. So from this, we turn towards this idea that love and grief are connected. Generally, we only grieve what we love. Otherwise, it would be like, well, thank God that's done, right? We only grieve what we love generally, and or what we could have loved. And this is what makes grief sacred, I think, because as long as we are open to love and loving and feeling in this world, we're going to get both ends of it. So how can we hold grief so that we can also hold love or remain open to love is a major question that I don't have all the answers to, of course, but I have some ideas. So I'll read to you now from DESCANSOS, which is a section here in the book. Women who are tortured often develop a dazzling kind of perception that has uncanny depth and breadth. Although I would never wish anyone tortured in order to learn the secret ins and outs of the unconscious, the fact is, having lived through a gross repression causes gifts to arise that compensate and protect. In that respect, a woman who has lived a torturous life and delved deeply into it definitely has inestimable depth. Though she came to it through pain, if she has done the hard work of clinging to consciousness, she will have a deep and thriving soul life. and a fierce belief in herself, regardless of occasional ego waverings. There is a time in our lives, usually in midlife, when a woman has to make a decision, possibly the most important psychic decision of her future life. And that is whether to be bitter or not. Women often come to this in their late 30s or early 40s. They are at the point where they are full up to their ears with everything, and they've had it. And the last straw has broken the camel's back, and they are pissed off and pooped out. Their dreams of their 20s may be lying in a crumple. There may be broken hearts, broken marriages, broken promises. A body who has lived a long time accumulates debris. It cannot be avoided. But if a woman will return to the instinctual nature instead of sinking into bitterness, she will be revivified, reborn. Wolf pups are born each year. Usually they are these little mewling, sleepy-eyed, dark-furred creatures, covered in dirt and straw. But they are immediately awake, playful, and loving, wanting to be close and comforted. They want to play, want to grow. The woman who returns to the instinctual and creative nature will come back to life. She will want to play. She will still want to grow, both wide and deep. But first, there has to be a cleansing. I would like to introduce you to the concept of descansos as I've developed it in my work. If you ever traveled in Old Mexico, New Mexico, Southern Colorado, Arizona, or parts of the South, you've seen little white crosses by the roadway. These are descansos, resting places. You'll also find them on the edges of cliffs along particularly scenic but dangerous roads in Greece, Italy, and other Mediterranean countries. Sometimes crosses are clustered in 2s or 3s or 5s. People's names are inscribed upon them. Jesus Mendez, Arturo Buenafuentes, Jeannie Abayeta. Sometimes the names are spelled out in nails. Sometimes they are painted on the wood or carved into it. Often they are profusely decorated with artificial or real flowers, or they glisten with chopped up new straw, glued to wood slats, making them shine like gold in the sun. Sometimes the descanso is just 2 sticks or pieces of pipe tied across one another with twine and stuck into the ground. In the rockiest passes, the cross is just painted onto a large rock at the roadside. Descansos are symbols that mark a death. Right there, right on that spot, someone's journey in life halted unexpectedly. There has been a car accident, or someone was walking there along the road and died of heat exhaustion, or a fight took place there. Something happened there that altered that person's life and the lives of other persons forever. Women have died 1,000 deaths before they are 20 years old. They've gone in this direction or that and have been cut off. They have hopes and dreams that have been cut off also. Anyone who says otherwise is still asleep. All of that is grist for the mill of descansos. While all these things deepen individuation, differentiation, growing up and growing out, blossoming, becoming awake and aware and conscious, they are also profound tragedies and have to be grieved as such. To make descansos means taking a look at your life and marking where the small deaths, las muertes chiquitas, and the big deaths, las muertes grandotas, have taken place. I like to make a timeline of a person's life on a big long sheet of white butcher paper and to mark with a cross the places along the graph, starting with her infancy all the way to the present, where parts and pieces of herself and her life have died. We mark where there were roads not taken, paths that were cut off, ambushes, betrayals, and deaths. I put a little cross along the timeline at the places that should have been mourned or still need to be mourned. And then I write in the background, forgotten, for those things that the woman senses, but which have not yet surfaced. I also write forgiven over those things the woman has, for the most part, released. I encourage you to make descansos, to sit down with a timeline of your life and say, where are the crosses? Where are the places that must be remembered, that must be blessed? In all our meanings that you've brought forward into your life today, they must be remembered and they must be forgotten at the same time. It takes time and patience. Be gentle with yourself and make the descansos, the resting places for the aspects of yourself that were on their way to somewhere, but never arrived. Descansos mark the death sites, the dark times, but they are also love notes to your suffering. They are transformative. There is a lot to be said for pinning things to the earth so they don't follow us around. There is a lot to be said for laying them to rest. Let's take a few breaths, a few moments, and let that settle in. If you want to move, you can move just instinctually what your body may be craving in this moment. So in this next part, I'll be guiding you through those gates of grief, as I mentioned, and there are 5, just so you know. Again, I don't expect you to, necessarily dive into each one. That could absolutely be way too much, of course. So do it as you'd like. You're free if you want to write at the top of a page each of the gates, so you can always come back to them later. Of course, you'll have the recording too. You might stay with one the whole time, etc. And if you do find it helpful to write, then please write. But if you want to reflect internally, you can also do that. So it's really open. You can doodle, you can move around. So it's really open. But I will introduce you to each gate as we go, and we'll see what may need to be acknowledged in the way that was described in that last book, in the last reading. So the first gate of grief is everything we love, we will lose. Living in time and space means just as we're in the moment, it's ending. And this is like one of the main existential dreads of humanity, right? So we don't have to be okay with it or happy about it, but it's true. Everything we love, we will lose. So that's the first gate, and I'll read to you a little bit from Francis Weller, who wrote this book. He says, "This is life's most difficult but essential teaching. Everything is a gift, and nothing lasts. No exceptions. My grief says that I dared to love, that I allowed another to enter the very core of my being and find a home in my heart. Everything we love, we will lose." I'll read that again and then share with you a poem that he wrote, and then we'll have some empty space to write or reflect. This is life's most difficult but essential teaching. Everything is a gift and nothing lasts. No exceptions. My grief says that I dared to love, that I allowed another to enter the very core of my being and find a home in my heart. And then he shares in the book a 12th century poem, which I share with you because to me, it shows, yeah, we've always been wrestling with this. It's from Judah Halevi. "'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch, to love, to hope, to dream, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools, this love, but a holy thing to love what death can touch." So I'm going to play some music for us and give you some time to sit with this in whatever way you want. You may acknowledge something that is ended, changed. And I'll give about, I don't know, let's see, 5 to 7 minutes, somewhere around there. Let's take about 2 or so more minutes with this gait. If you're done at any time, feel free to come to a comfortable shape. You can lay down, you could come to a child's pose. You could lean back against the wall. See if you could let your body decide what may be most helpful to kind of hold some space for what you're coming to now. Of course, as we go, allowing whatever emotions to come. It's exactly what this space is for. Yeah, so allowing it as much as you can, as long as it feels okay to. So you may again stay with that first gate. It's a big one, maybe the biggest. I don't know, arguable, depends, I guess. But feel free to stay with that. If you would like to kind of move on to the next prompt, then let's take a breath together in between. So feel free, if you'd like, here to exhale all the air that's in your lungs now. And then to refill a long breath that fills all the way towards the lower belly and then coming to the very top. And you may hold for 3, 2, 1. Feeling free to sigh now. Big breath out. And then letting your breath return to its own natural rhythm. Feeling the steady ground beneath you. You can look around in the room you're in. Just remember you are the 4 walls surrounding you. The candle, maybe if there is one, or blanket, or anything like that. The second gate is where we'll come next. And this gate is the places in us that have not known love. The places in us that have not known love. And I'll read to you about that now. From Francis Weller still. This grief occurs in the places untouched by love. These are profoundly tender places, precisely because they have lived outside of kindness, compassion, warmth, or welcome. These are the places within us that have been wrapped in shame and banished to the furthest shores of our lives. These neglected pieces of soul live in utter despair. The proper response to any loss is grief. But we cannot grieve for something that we feel is outside the circle of worth. When we can truly weep for ourselves and those places of shame, we have invited the first soothing waters of healing to wash through our souls. Grieving by its very nature confirms worth. Grieving says, my losses matter. Gosh, this one really hit me when I first credit. So see if there's some way to feel if this one is too much to go towards today, and knowing that you can, choose to come back to it later if need be. I'm going to read that again though, just in case. Feel free to mute me if you want, if it's too much for now. The places in us that have not known love. This grief occurs in the places untouched by love. These are profoundly tender places precisely because they have lived outside of kindness, compassion, warmth, or welcome. These are the places within us that have been wrapped in shame and banished to the furthest shores of our lives. These neglected pieces of soul live in utter despair. The proper response to any loss is grief, but we cannot grieve for something that we feel is outside the circle of worth. When we can truly weep for ourselves and those places of shame, we have invited the first soothing waters of healing to wash through our souls. Grieving by its very nature confirms worth. Grief says, my losses matter. So we'll take again about 5 to 7 minutes here. I'll keep playing music for you, and then I'll come back to you with a poem. If you're not being with this gate, not engaging with it, you can again continue with the first one, or you can come to a supportive shape for you. Before I did child's pose, but in case you've never tried it, sometimes child's pose with some support underneath can be really nice to give the head and the heart something to rest on. Of course, you can use a pillow too. It doesn't need to be a bolster. So if you're looking for an idea, maybe it's that. You did come with me towards that supported child's pose and you had one ear down. Feeling free now if you'd like to turn the other ear to face down or continuing with what you are or adjusting in any way if you need to be here for a few more minutes. Okay, so feeling free to finish up anything you are writing if you were, and then we may come together for a breath if you'd like. So we can start with an exhale all the way to empty, and then a nice long full breath towards the lower belly if you can, all the way to the very top, and you may hold for 3, 2, 1, and release. Maybe a big sigh, knowing you can come to those anytime. Let's again remember the steady ground beneath us, holding us here in this moment, surrounded by 4 walls, probably. And then maybe noticing as well something comforting around you, whether it be a candle or a plant or a blanket, kind of soft texture of something. If you don't have a candle, I do, so you can look at these ones. Yeah. Oh, here's the poem that I'll finish this gate with. It's written by Persia Gertler, but it's also featured in the same book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life. All the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again. Where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, I lift them one by one close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy. Okay, so again, taking a moment to see if there's some way to sense if it's okay to continue, if it's too much, if you need to walk away, if you need to grab a snack, if you need to mute me for a few minutes. All of it very welcome. None of this by force. Let's respect the resistance tonight. This next one is called The Sorrows of the World. So we get much wider now to the grief we sense collectively. And so, of course, if we find ourselves paying attention in any way to world events, we can feel discouraged and hopeless and even traumatized. Historically, we have never been able to tune in to so much worldwide grief so directly and so immediately. And our hearts break as a result if we're paying attention in any way for Palestine, for Congo, for missing and murdered Indigenous women, for the rise in hatred against 2S LGBTQIA+, Jewish, Muslim, and racialized people. We grieve for the degradation of our planet. And of course, none of this is an exhaustive list. So if I've missed something important to you, then of course, please add that for me. In grieving for people that we may never know or may never meet, we long for a world that cherishes all people. We long for a world that is more loving and peaceful and free. And as ugly as the reasons for this ache are, as horrifying and devastating as they are, our grieving is directly connected to our loving for people that we will never meet. Or maybe we do meet. But regardless, there's this stepping outside of our own needs, our own things that directly affect us, and we have a love for the whole of humanity. That means that we also grieve for others too. So I'd like to read you a poem, of course, by Margot Feldman. To the deep feelers, please do not lose your capacity to feel deeply. We need those whose hearts crack open at the sight of injustice. Those who aren't afraid to let their tears fall. Or if they are afraid, they do not let their fear stop those tears from falling. Each tear is the water needed to grow the seeds of a just world. And so here with this gate, the sorrows of the world, if there's something that you'd like to write about, you can do that. You can think about, you can send love towards, but it doesn't have to be in that way. It could be coming to lay and keep people in our minds, keep people wider than ourselves in our hearts, even just for a few moments. And that may look like sitting with the candle. It may look like moving or rocking ourselves. There's no particular way it needs to happen. And like with all gates, if this one is too much today, feel free to take a break, to step away. It's no problem, but we'll take about 5 or so minutes here, turning towards the sorrows of the world if we are. Hey, I was maybe going a little too slow with our time management. So I'm going to continue, but not intentionally to hurry this big gate away, but to allow time for us to come back to practice at the end. So that we don't stay here. We'll come to some practices after this part. So I'll continue, but of course, this may be something you return to, or maybe you stay with instead of proceeding to the next gate. Totally up to you. And let's take a breath first. If you'd like, you can again exhale all the way to empty, and then a long full inhale all the way down towards the lower belly. When you're ready, maybe a sigh as you let that breath come out. Yeah. Okay. Our next gate from Francis Weller is what we expected and did not receive. So grieving what we may have expected but did not receive. And this one is so interesting to me because it is a little bit personal and a little collective, and I'll read to you directly from the book about that. Deep in our bones lies an old intuition that we arrive here carrying a bundle of gifts to offer to the community. In a sense, it is a form of spiritual employment. Hidden within the losses at this gate lies our diminished experience of who we truly are. When we are born and as we pass through adulthood, we are designed to anticipate a certain quality of welcome, engagement, touch, and reflection, the container of the village. The loss is felt as a vague sadness, an ache, a fog. It is difficult to grieve. It is not a personal failing, but a symptom of a wider loss. At the core of this grief is a longing to belong, wired into us by necessity. What we expected and did not receive. I'll read it again, just in case. Deep in our bones lies an old intuition that we arrive here carrying a bundle of gifts to offer to the community. In a sense, it is a form of spiritual employment. Hidden within the losses at this gate lies our diminished experience of who we truly are. When we are born and as we pass through adulthood, we are designed to anticipate a certain quality of welcome engagement, touch, and reflection, the container of the village. The loss is felt as a vague sadness, an ache, a fog. It is difficult to grieve. It is not a personal failing, but a symptom of a wider loss. At the core of this grief is a longing to belong, wired into us by necessity. And so at this gate, there may be something specific that's kind of stirred up for you as with the other ones. Or as he writes, it may be like that vague sense of loss or something missing. And so let us not imagine that it's a problem to solve in this moment anyway, but maybe something to acknowledge and turn towards, to be honored, basically, just by the willingness to give it attention and give it some space. So we'll take a couple moments right here, remembering you can choose to opt out in whatever way you need in this gate. I'll offer us a breath now together. Starting with an exhale all the way to empty. And then filling back up into the chest and the ribs and the belly, all the way down to the lower belly and holding if you like. And whenever you're ready, maybe a sigh. Yeah. Okay, if you can believe it, we still have one more gate. We still have one more. What I miss about doing this online is like, even though this is a very sad and heavy topic, generally in person, we have a few laughs here and there. And so I'm thinking of that now and remembering that now, and maybe I'll laugh for us. So maybe you have laughed at a memory or something like that. Isn't it odd and strange how it's sometimes grief, like some of the heaviest emotions we can feel, are also tied up with sometimes silliness. And yeah, I'm just remembering that now. But let's come to another really heavy topic. This is the fifth gate that I have for you now. And this is the grief we carry from sorrows experienced by our ancestors. The grief we carry from sorrows experienced by our ancestors. So seeing if this is okay to go towards or not for you today. Here in this gate, we may acknowledge loss of culture, loss of home, place through immigration. Here we may acknowledge colonialism or slavery, largely undigested grief and trauma from our ancestors that we know scientifically now we carry in our cells and in our DNA. We may be acknowledging lack of rights or freedoms or resources. And just to know that just as trauma and grief can be passed intergenerationally, so can healing too. So can processing and acknowledging and honoring these things influence our family lines later on. So just as just as it can go in one way, it can also go the other. So your willingness to be here tonight may be largely important for your own cells, and potentially if you do pass your genes on, that can be passed on too. So I'll leave a couple moments here in case there's something to write or to acknowledge for yourself, and then we'll move towards practice. And let's take a breath together. If you'd like to join and sync up, we're going to exhale out all the way to empty. Once again, bringing an inhale in, maybe even bringing the shoulders up into the ears here. Holding for a moment, and then when you're ready to exhale, maybe a sigh. You can let the shoulders drop down away from the ears. So we'll come into practice now. So remembering, like everything, it's optional. Opt in, opt out as you need, take what you need. If you'd like to still be here with us virtually, but, laying down or, whatever it is you need, continuing to write, I'll leave it to you. But I'll start to offer you a little bit more in terms of practice possibilities. So I'm going to give us the option to make this as a mudra, which in yoga is like it's actually technically like an energetic seal, but it's generally like a hand position or arrangement. And so here we make like a little cup with our hands. And this is because grief comes from the Latin word gravis, which means heavy. So here we're imagining that all together we can hold the sorrows we've kind of stirred up tonight in these gates of grief together. Just as we would, maybe ask for help to hold something really heavy, here we're holding all together, even though we're in different places and even in different times if you're watching the recording now. If we were in person, you would see us all gathered in a circle around an altar with our hands like this. So you can just imagine that there are other people here with you tonight, right now, holding heavy things for themselves, for the world. And here we are holding it together. And so there are 10 of us here in person tonight. And assuming some people are coming with a recording later, we're going to hold 10 spaces. And when we do this in person, generally what we'll do is we have each person come forward into the circle. They lay something on the altar, something they've written down, and then we take a breath together. And if you've ever in a yoga practice or somewhere else taken a collective breath, you may remember how it feels to breathe in and out with other people at the same time. If you've never experienced that, you may imagine it here, and we're going to kind of do our best with the online format. So here, holding the heavy thing, in a moment, we'll take an inhale for each person. And then with the exhale, we can kind of let the hands come apart and wide, as if we may come to some way of resting this sorrow down into the earth, as described in the Women Who Run with the Wolves book. Yeah. So we're going to hold a space for each person as we go. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with an exhale. You can hold your little bowl hands together. And we'll take a breath in right here. And with your exhale, go ahead and let those hands come apart. And we'll breathe in together, cupping the hands. And when you're ready, a breath, hands come apart. If our breath paces don't match, go ahead with your own. Breathing in and holding the heavy thing, and with the exhale, finding some way of letting it settle now into the earth. We'll come again for the inhale. And out with your exhale. In and out. In and out. In and out. In and out. And last one, in and out. Beautiful. And now, whether you're standing or seated, you can breathe in and reach the arms up to the sky or forwards if that works better with the shoulders. And with the exhale, hands can come down the sides. or down towards the ground, and we'll breathe in and reach up and exhale. We're starting to bring some movement now, moving with all that's been stirred up tonight, allowing movement and breath to come together. And if it feels okay to continue, let's take about 3 more rounds, including this one. Breathing in, your full inhale reaches up or forwards. And breathing out, we sweep back towards the earth. One more time. And as you exhale, hands can come down. You can let your arms stay heavy, and you can breathe in, shoulders drop into the ears. And with your exhale, let the shoulders roll down the back. And taking 2 more just like that. Exhale as the shoulders drop away from the ears. And one more time. And now I'd like to introduce you to a practice I have called vase throwing, one of many of my clients' favorites. Maybe that's true for you, maybe not, but feel free to try it with me. Generally, we'll stand up. And the idea is that we're picking up a big vase, and you can think of this as full of anything that needs to be released, any pattern or thought or idea that we want to kind of push out. It could be something we're holding on to. Now, of course, not everything that we're grieving we necessarily want to let go of, but there are some things that need to be cleared generally. So if there's something that's been stirred up for you, you can think of that. And I will just mention before we get started, I'm going to show you the way where we kind of reach up, and as we exhale, the head comes down along with the arms. If you find that that makes you dizzy or uncomfortable, it can be just the arms. And so in that way, you could do it from seated if you don't want to stand up, but you're welcome to stand too. So I hope you can still hear me well, a little further from the mic, but you can breathe in and reach the arms up to the sky. And with your exhale, you can smash that vase. Feeling free to take a big exhale, and inhale, we'll lift back up. And exhale to smash that vase. Feeling free to bend your knees. Let's take about 3 more. One more big breath in. And all the way out. And then if you're coming back to stand, you can reach the arms up one more time. And this time as you exhale, the arms can come down to one side and back up as you inhale. And to the other side. And we'll continue like that, side to side, breathing in to reach out. Breathing out to one side. And let's take about 2 more each side. You can imagine kind of giving all this emotion that may be stirred up tonight somewhere to go, like a channel. And you can now let the hands come down beside your hips. You can be seated if you want for this, or you can stay standing. You can bring the shoulders up into the ears once again as you inhale. And as you exhale, shoulders can roll down the back now. And let's take our time with 2 more rounds at your own pace. Allowing grief to come along with you even as we move. No need for it to go away. So now I'll introduce you to a rocking practice. If you're not already seated, you may want to come towards seated now. And you can breathe in and reach the arms up towards the sky. And as we exhale, let's bend the elbows, drawing the heart forward a little bit, the shoulders back. And as you're here, you can breathe in, let the elbows come back even just a tiny bit more, like a centimeter. And then let's wrap the right arm under the left, or whichever side. We're going to do both. And you can see if you'd like to grab the elbows, or if you may be able to grab up onto the shoulders. And we'll breathe in and we'll let the elbows lift towards the sky, any amount, maybe looking up. And as you exhale, elbows to belly, chin to chest, you can round the spine. And with your inhale, you may come back up any amount. And as you breathe out, you can round back in. And one more time, just like that, if it's feeling good so far. Next time you round chin to chest, elbows towards the belly, you may hold here, letting the chin really tuck in. You can close down the eyes if you'd like, and you can be still, or you may sway and rock yourself side to side. Rocking here with any grief that has been stirred up tonight, not necessarily in an effort to make it go away or to fix it, because grief is not a problem, but to care for it, to honor it, to acknowledge that care and support may be needed here, and to offer that with this movement or with whatever other kind of shape or movement or posture you may have needed right now. It's also welcome. It's maybe true that we all have a memory of being rocked somewhere in our early years. It's kind of our natural tendency when a baby is crying, for example, or a little kid. And so here we offer that same intention of to soothe, to care for, with our own rocking right here, hands to shoulders like a hug. And when you're ready, you can breathe in and let the elbows come wide apart again. Let the heart draw forward, maybe even looking up a little bit, opening back up. This time it'll be left arm under right, or whatever side you haven't done. You can bring hands to shoulders or elbows, or wherever you can comfortably reach. When you're ready to breathe in, you can lift the elbows up a little bit, lifting the heart. And when you're ready to exhale, elbows can draw into the belly, chin into the chest, rounding the spine. Feeling free to take two more just like that. And as you exhale, elbows towards the belly, you can let the spine round and feel free to sway and rock right here. If you'd rather be still, you also can. If you'd like to close the eyes, you can, as if we could allow grief to be here with us right now in whatever ways it has already shown up. No need to force it. And to offer care and accompaniment and gentleness, those tender places that need, as Clarissa put it, to be remembered and forgotten at the same time. We remember them so we can't forget them. It's kind of wild. We remember them so that they don't take over everything, but they become something that comes along with us. And whenever you're ready, you could breathe in and let the elbows come wide again. And with the exhale, you can let the hands come to rest down beside your hips. Now, I'm going to offer the option for us to come to our backs now. If you'd rather be seated or, any other way, as usual, it's always welcome. But if you would like to come to the back, please do take your time. You can draw the knees up into your belly, rounding through the lower back. You can wrap your arms around the legs if you'd like, and you can be still, or you might sway side to side, giving yourself that gentle rocking. And from here, you may come to lay right on your back, extending the legs forward into Shavasana, also known as corpse pose. And generally, traditionally, this means that the heels are a little wider than the hips, the toes rolling kind of open, the hands, palms face up on either side of the hips, and the eyes closed. But if this is an uncomfortable shape or there's a more comfortable place you could be, then please go ahead there. It might be fetal pose, for example. You could lie on your side, knees drawn into belly, chin to chest, curled up in like a little ball. Here's where you may recruit those pillows and blankets. If you would be more comfortable seated, feel free to be seated, but maybe leaning back if you'd like against a wall or couch or something like that. And Shavasana is a place of surrender. My teacher, Anne, would suggest that actually this practice of surrendering at the end of every yoga class, every yoga practice, is intended to prepare us for the ultimate surrender, which is dying, of course. If that's a little too much for today, I completely understand. Maybe we can think of this as a place to let go of what we may have been holding on to. In other words, allowing grief and allowing endings as the way it is right now. So in order to do this kind of embodiment of like a surrender into the way it is, we don't have to be happy about it. Remember, we can just find a way to allow. And that can be found perhaps through a heaviness that we feel down through the heels, a heaviness through the hips, drawing us into the earth, a heaviness through the shoulder blades, the elbows, the hands, and a heaviness in the head that allows for a softness to wash over the forehead and the eyes and the cheeks and the jaw, our hearts, our bellies can soften now, all the way down through the thighs, the calves, and the soles of the feet. Releasing all effort here down into the earth that holds you now. Stillness is not the place to be. Of course, you can move, you can rock, you can sway, you can take whatever you need here. Allowing and honoring of all the endings and all the other brave things you've come to tonight. as you lay and rest as you are, I'll read to you a poem I wrote called Pour. I am lighting a candle for grief. I am cooking noodles alongside it. I am distracting it. I am surrendering to it. I am trying to be patient when it smashes into me like a concrete wall, so hard I almost forget who I am. The thing is, I'm learning that being open to everything worth anything, love, of course. Loving is opening the door to deafening grief, or admitting that in the absence of it, that love is what you needed and all that you searched for after all. Grief creeps in all unexpected and jagged and woven into my cells, all the trillions of them. Everyone wants a mother. I promise you that. I put a hand to my aching belly and I soften the shoulder crept up almost all the way to my ear. And I light a candle. And in doing so, I join the many grievers now and before and for always, sat beside a candle, sick with grief and living anyway. Let's take another breath together. If you would like to join, you can exhale and empty out, and then fill from collarbone all the way to the lower belly. And you may hold and maybe even take one more little sip in and then hold a little bit more. And when you're ready for a big sigh, I would like to leave you with a question that you may write about or you may wonder about, that you may carry with you as a part of your grieving practice. And it's from my therapist, who's also a yoga therapist, Lisa. The question is, what will sustain me in times of grief? Well, what will sustain you in times of grief? And feel free. I mean, it can be so many things. It can be practices like this. It can be a photo you keep in your wallet. It can be a comedy on Netflix. It can be anything. Poetry. It can be, whatever it is for you. What's going to sustain you when you are smacked by grief? What do you want to remember? That kind of thing. You'll have this recording, so that's lovely. We'll have another one of these in the fall and probably twice a year for the foreseeable future, so that we may have a space for. Please remember, if you need additional support beyond this session, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, whether it's me that supports you or if you'd like me to connect you with another yoga therapist, psychotherapist. I know some good people that I'm happy to connect you with. Or if you have your own networks of support already in place, please feel free to reach out to them. Everyone, but thank you for being here and turning towards and honoring all that you loved and could have loved. We have these ceremonies once a month, not like this every time. We do different topics depending on what's coming. I think I have an idea for next one, but we'll see. Generally, it's kind of like this, though, in that there's some movement and some writing and some poetry and some music. And so you're more than welcome to join us for that or for our weekly yoga nidras, a guided rest practice. Otherwise, I wish you a beautiful rest of your night. One more thing, actually, because you've come to do some heavy, hard work tonight, I would love if you would reward yourself today or tomorrow with a treat, okay? Whether that's like chocolate or a cheeseburger or ordering Uber Eats so you don't have to make dinner, or, you know, maybe it's not food related, but whatever you can do as a gift, a treat to yourself, something light, to thank yourself for being here tonight, I would recommend that as your homework. Okay? Much love to you all. Thank you again. Appreciate you. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night.